I was standing in my kitchen, holding my phone, staring at the wedding photos my cousin had just posted. My sister in a white dress. Everyone smiling. My parents in the front row. And not a single empty chair. My phone buzzed again. It was my mother. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. "You need to come. Right now." I looked back at the photos. Then I said quietly, "You didn't invite me." There was a pause. Then she whispered, "Please. Something has gone very wrong." I didn't move. I didn't rush for my keys. I didn't ask what happened. I just stood there, barefoot on the cold tile, listening to my mother cry into the phone, like she hadn't cried since I was a child. My sister's wedding. The one I found out about from Facebook. The one where my entire family showed up in formal clothes, while I sat alone in sweatpants with a cup of coffee going cold on the counter. My mother kept talking. Her words were tumbling over each other now. His yelling. "The groomsmen are arguing. People are leaving. Your father doesn't know what to do. Please, just come." I leaned against the counter. I felt nothing sharp. No spike, no panic, just something heavy settling into place. "I wasn't wanted there," I said. "Remember?" She made a sound like she'd been slapped. "That's not what this is about." I closed my eyes. "That's always what this is about." Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. If you've ever been treated like this by family, hit like and subscribe. Because this story proves what happens when you stop staying silent. I lowered the phone and stared at my reflection in the microwave door. My hair was messy. My face looked calm in a way that didn't match the situation. I should have been frantic. But all I felt was clear. My sister had sent wedding invitations to everyone. My cousins, our neighbors. Even my old high school friend who hadn't spoken to her in years. But not me, not her only sister. I found out by accident, a week earlier. I'd run into my aunt at the grocery store. She'd hugged me and said, "I can't believe it's almost time. I hope you found a nice dress." I smiled because that's what I do. "What dress?" She froze. And that's how I learned. Later, when I confronted my sister, she didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She said, "It's my day. I don't want any negativity." I laughed because the word felt surreal. Negativity. She shrugged. "You always make things heavy. I want the vibe to be light." Then my father stepped in. "Don't make this about you," he said. "It's her day." It was always her day, her birthday, her graduation, her engagement, her wedding. I was just noise. So I stayed home. I didn't send a message. I didn't show up anyway. I didn't cause a scene. I respected the boundary they drew. And now they wanted me to cross it to clean up their mess. My mother was still crying. "Please," she said. "Your sister is having a breakdown. The groom's family is furious. Someone said something they shouldn't have. It's spiraling." I asked one question. "What did they say?" She hesitated. Then, "They asked why her own sister wasn't here." I let that sit between us. That single sentence felt heavier than all the others. Someone had noticed. Someone had asked. And now the story was unraveling. "I'm not coming," I said. She gasped. "You can't do this." I felt my jaw tighten. "I didn't do anything." She started sobbing again. I hung up. I didn't block her. I didn't throw my phone. I just set it face down on the counter and stood there, breathing. The house was quiet. No chaos. No screaming. No white dresses or champagne flutes. Just me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like the quiet was mine. 5 minutes later, my phone lit up again. This time it wasn't my mother. It was my sister. Her name on the screen made something twist in my chest. I answered. She didn't start with hello. "Why aren't you here?" I almost laughed. "You didn't invite me. That doesn't mean you weren't supposed to come." I stared at the wall. "You mailed physical invitations. So you left me out." She exhaled sharply. "You're being dramatic." I felt something cold settle in my spine. "You erased me," I said. "On purpose?" She snapped. "I didn't want you here making everything about yourself." I smiled, softly. "You've been making everything about yourself my whole life." She was quiet. Not because she felt bad, because she didn't know what to say when the usual script stopped working. "You're ruining my wedding." she said. I closed my eyes. I'm at home, I said. You're the one calling me. She started crying then, not quietly, not with shame, with rage. You always do this, she said. You always punish me. I thought about all the times I'd swallowed my words to keep the peace. All the times I'd shown up uninvited and been ignored. All the times I'd been asked to be smaller so she could be bigger. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm finally choosing myself. She hung up. I stood there with the deadline humming in my ear. My phone buzzed again. A message this time, from my cousin. It was a photo, the groom in the hallway, red-faced. His hand in his hair. Another photo. Two of his relatives yelling at my father. Another. My sister sitting on the floor in her dress, mascara streaked, people around her looking lost. Then a message. They're asking questions. My cousin wrote. They're not happy. I stared at the photos. Not with triumph. Not with guilt. With something closer to relief. The truth had found the room. And I wasn't even there. I didn't reply to my cousin. I didn't explain myself. I just stared at the images until my phone dimmed and the screen went black again. My sister's wedding was collapsing in real time, and I wasn't part of it. That was the part that felt unreal. Not that it was happening, but that it was happening without me having to carry it. My phone rang again. This time it was my father. I almost didn't answer. But I did. His voice was tight, controlled in the way he used when he wanted to sound calm but wasn't. Where are you? 8 home. You need to get here. I leaned against the counter again. Why? Because this is a family situation. I almost laughed. A family situation I wasn't invited to. He exhaled through his nose. Don't do this right now. Don't do what? Turn this into a point. I looked at the window over the sink. It was dark outside. The world hadn't shifted. No sirens, no fireworks. Just a normal evening. I didn't turn anything into anything, I said. You did when you left me out. There was a pause. Then he said something that made my stomach go cold. They're saying you didn't come because you're jealous. I closed my eyes. Jealous. Of what? Of being excluded. Of being erased. Of being talked about like a problem instead of a person. I'm not jealous, I said. I'm done. He didn't respond right away. Then he said, you're being selfish. I felt it then. Not anger, not hurt, clarity. You taught me that word, I said. You used it every time I had a boundary. He went quiet. Then he said, if you don't come, this will damage your relationship with your sister permanently. I almost smiled. As opposed to what we had. He hung up. I put the phone down again. My hands were steady. That's what surprised me most. No shaking, no pacing, no urge to explain. Just a quiet sense that I had finally stepped out of a storm I didn't create. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. It was the groom's sister. I recognized the name because I'd met her once, years ago, at a barbecue. I'm sorry to bother you, the text said. But I need to ask you something directly. I hesitated, then I replied, what? Why weren't you at the wedding? I stared at the words, simple, direct, no accusation, just a question. I wasn't invited. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again, then a response. She said you didn't want to come. I felt my jaw tighten. That's not true. More dots. Then, she said you don't support the marriage. I laughed quietly. She never asked. There was a longer pause this time. Then, this is causing a problem. I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't responsible for managing it. My cousin messaged again. They're arguing about you. I wrote back one line. I'm not there. She sent a heart emoji. That was it. The night went on. Messages trickled in. Relatives asking if I was okay. A friend asking if something had happened. One person wrote, I didn't even realize you weren't there until now. That one hit the hardest. Not because it hurt, but because it proved how easy it had been to erase me. And how visible that erasure became when someone finally noticed. Then my sister called again. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was shaking. This was supposed to be perfect, she said. You couldn't just let me have this. I listened to it twice. Not to analyze it, just to feel how familiar it was. Her pain always mattered. Mine was always inconvenient. She wasn't crying because she missed me. She was crying because the image she built cracked. I didn't call her back. I went to my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. I thought about being little. About following her around. About copying her clothes. About wanting her approval. About how slowly that wanting had turned into shrinking. And how shrinking had turned into silence. And how silence had turned into absence. And now my absence was loud. I heard my phone buzz again. Another message. This time from my aunt. Your mother is not okay. I stared at the ceiling. I knew. But I wasn't responsible for managing that either. Then another. From the groom's mother. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew what it would say. Confusion? Concern. A polite version of the same question. Why? I finally picked up my phone and wrote one message. To a family group chat I hadn't used in years. Just one line. I wasn't invited. I didn't add context. I didn't explain. I didn't soften it. I sent it. Then I muted the chat. I lay back on the bed. I felt tired, not emotionally, just physically. Like someone who had been holding something heavy for a long time and finally put it down. The truth was out there now. Not as an accusation. Not as a scene. Just as a fact. And facts have weight, even when spoken quietly. I fell asleep without meaning to. Not deeply. Just enough to drift. When I woke up, my phone was buzzing on the nightstand. The screen was full of notifications, missed calls, messages, voicemails. I sat up slowly and scrolled. My mother, my father, my sister, my aunt, my cousin again. And a few numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't feel dread. I felt braced. Like I already knew what the tone would be. Not concern. Damage control. I opened my mother's voicemail. Her voice was hoarse. They're asking questions. They're saying things. I don't know what to tell them. Please call me. Not, you okay? Not, I'm sorry. Just help me manage this. I didn't call back. I opened my father's. This has gone too far, he said. You embarrassed the family. I deleted it. I opened my sister's. She wasn't crying this time. She was cold. I don't know why you hate me so much. I stared at the screen after it ended. Hate, that word was easier for her than responsibility. I put the phone down again. Then I heard a knock. Not loud, not urgent, just a knock. I froze. No one ever came to my apartment unannounced. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was my cousin. She looked tired. I opened the door. She didn't hug me. She just looked at me. They're unraveling, she said. I stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the couch like someone sitting in a waiting room. They're fighting with the groom's family. They're fighting with each other. Your sister locked herself in a room. I nodded. She studied me. You okay? It wasn't a question she'd ever asked me before. Yes, I said. She believed me. They didn't think you'd actually not show, she said. They thought you'd cave. I looked at my hands. They always do. She hesitated. People are starting to realize what that means. I didn't reply. She took a breath. Your sister told them you didn't support the marriage. I smiled faintly. Of course you did. But then someone asked why you weren't even invited. I looked up. And she didn't have an answer that made sense. We sat in silence for a moment. Then my cousin said something that landed heavier than anything else. They're realizing this isn't about the wedding. I felt something soften in my chest. Good. She nodded. They're realizing this is about how you're treated. I exhaled. I didn't know I'd been holding my breath. She always does this, my cousin said. She builds a story where she's the center, and anything that doesn't fit gets cut out. I swallowed. I just happened to be the thing this time. My cousin shook her head. No, you've always been the thing. It just wasn't visible before. I looked away. She stood up. I should go. I walked her to the door. Before she left, she turned back. For what it's worth, she said. I'm glad you didn't go. After she left, I sat alone again. The apartment felt warmer. Not quieter, just steadier. My phone buzzed again. This time it was the groom's sister. I talked to my brother. She wrote. He's very upset. I didn't reply. Then another message. He feels lied to. I stared at that one. That was new. Not chaos. Not embarrassment. Accountability. I typed back. I'm sorry he's hurting. She replied, he deserves the truth. I stared at the words. Then I wrote, so do I. She sent a simple response. I agree. That was all. Later that night, my father texted, we need to talk. I didn't answer. My mother texted, please. I didn't answer. My sister didn't text. That was the loudest part. I went to bed again. This time I slept. Not because everything was resolved, but because something had shifted. In the morning, I woke up to a long message from my aunt. She wrote about how she hadn't realized, about how she saw now, about how she was sorry. I read it once. I didn't respond, not yet. Then a message from my mother. I didn't mean for this to happen. I stared at it. I finally replied. I didn't either. Then I turned my phone off, not dramatically, just intentionally. I went outside. The air was cold, the city was waking up, people walking dogs, coffee shops opening, life continuing. I felt like I was stepping back into it after standing just outside it for a long time. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing. I wasn't invisible anymore. Not because I shouted, but because I stopped disappearing. I left my phone off longer than I meant to. Not as a statement. Just because I didn't need it. I walked. I bought coffee. I sat on a bench and watched people move through their mornings. No one was demanding anything from me. It felt new. When I finally turned my phone back on, the notifications flooded in, but the tone had changed, less urgency, more recalibration. My aunt again. I spoke to your sister. Another from my cousin. Your parents are not aligned. That one made me pause. Then a new message, from my father. Can we meet? Not a demand, not an accusation. A request. That was new too. I didn't answer right away. I finished my coffee. Then I wrote. Where? He sent an address. A small cafe near their house. Neutral ground. I went. He was already there when I arrived, sitting straight. Hands folded, trying to look composed. He stood when he saw me. Thank you for coming. I sat. We looked at each other like strangers who shared a history neither of us knew how to hold anymore. I didn't expect this, he said. I waited. He swallowed. I didn't think it would become this visible. There it was, not. I didn't realize I hurt you. But I didn't think anyone would see it. I nodded. That's usually how it works. He flinched. He looked older than I remembered. Not weaker. Just caught. They're asking questions I don't have answers to, he said. I didn't rescue him. I never thought of you as excluded, he said. Just less central. I looked at him. That's what exclusion is. He went quiet. I thought you were strong enough not to need things. I felt that land, not as an excuse, as a confession. You taught me to be? I said. He stared at the table. I didn't protect you. No, I said. You didn't. The words hung between us, not angry, just true. I don't know how to fix this, he said. I looked at him. I'm not asking you to. He looked up. What do you want? That question felt important. Not for him, for me. I want honesty, I said. I want to stop pretending things are fine when they're not. I want to stop being the one who absorbs everything. He nodded slowly. I can try. I'm not asking you to try, I said. I'm asking you to accept it when I don't. He nodded again. I understand. I wasn't sure he did, but he was listening. That was enough for now. When I left the cafe, I felt lighter, not because he changed, but because I didn't carry the need for him to. Later that day, my sister texted, I need to talk to you. I stared at the message. I didn't feel ready, but I didn't feel afraid either. I wrote, okay. We met at our mother's house. She was there too, hovering, watching, trying to manage the emotional temperature. My sister looked smaller without the wedding around her. No dress, no attention, just her. She crossed her arms. I didn't think you cared. I looked at her. I cared enough to stop lying. She scoffed. You always take things personally. I held her gaze. You always make things personal when you're the one affected. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I didn't invite you because I didn't want you judging me. I felt my chest tighten. You didn't invite me because you didn't want me to exist in the room as someone equal. I said. She laughed sharply. You're reading too much into it. No, I said. I've been reading too little into it for years. My mother stepped forward. Let's all just calm down. I turned to her. No. The word surprised all of us. This isn't a moment to smooth over, I said. This is a moment to see. My sister's voice shook. I didn't think it would matter this much. I nodded. That's the problem? She looked away. I'm sorry you felt left out. I felt something harden. That's not an apology, she sighed. I'm sorry I didn't invite you. That was closer, but not there yet. Why? I asked. She hesitated. Then quietly. Because when you're there, I feel like I'm not the only one. I stared at her. Not in anger. In recognition. She wasn't cruel. She was afraid of sharing space. I'm not trying to take anything from you, I said. I just don't want to disappear for you to feel whole. She nodded slowly. I didn't know that's what I was doing. I believed her. Not because it excused it, but because it explained it. That was enough for today. Word count Li 1 year 20. Total so far. Zodi 4090 Part 5. We didn't hug. We didn't cry together. We didn't promise anything. We just sat there with the truth between us, like an object neither of us could pretend wasn't real anymore. My mother looked relieved and uncomfortable at the same time. Relieved that the tension had dropped, uncomfortable that it hadn't disappeared. My sister stood first. I need time, she said. I nodded. Me too. She left. My mother hovered. Are you okay? I looked at her. Yes, I said. And I will be even if no one else changes. She nodded like she didn't fully understand what that meant yet. But she would, eventually. I walked out of the house into the late afternoon light. It felt ordinary. And that felt extraordinary. No adrenaline. No collapse. No dramatic closure, just the quiet sense that something had ended, and something else had begun. Not reconciliation. Not revenge. Alignment. With myself. The next few weeks were quiet. Not empty. Just calm. I didn't get invited to family dinners. I didn't get excluded either. Things were paused. People were adjusting. So was I. My cousin messaged me one day. You're different now. I asked what she meant. You don't explain yourself anymore. I smiled at that. My father sent me a photo a week later, a picture of an old album, me and my sister as kids, used both smiling, not competing, not managing, just existing. He wrote, I forgot this version of you existed. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to be seen by him in order to be real. The groom and my sister rescheduled a small ceremony months later. I was invited, not as an obligation, as a choice. I didn't go. Not because I was bitter, but because I didn't want to enter a space that hadn't yet learned how to hold me without shrinking me. Maybe one day, not today. Instead, I spent that day with a friend at a lake. We sat on the dock and watched the water. No one needed anything from me, and that felt like enough. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who bent, the one who waited, the one who swallowed herself to make room for others. She didn't disappear. She just stopped being in charge. I was still kind, still open, still willing, just no longer available for erasure. That was the difference. Not loud, not dramatic, just firm and steady and mine.